So I know that that's about the RAIN project, kind of what I'm doing, but I'm also gonna talk a little bit about kind of the USDA in general, kind of what our purpose is, and then a little bit of my other research here. Kind of try to get some of you excited about what I think is the most important science, is agricultural science. So I'm Travis Witt, and I'm a research agronomist with the USDA, U.S. Department of Agricultural Research Service, Grazinglands Research Laboratory. It's a mouthful, but it's a good place to work. So I'll start off with this. Got to say, mention of trademarks, property, products, or vendors does not constitute recommendation, guarantee, or warranty of product by the USDA. Basically, other products can be just fine, and the USDA does not discriminate based on race, religion, age, sex, sexual identity, age, status, or handicap. So a little bit about myself. Let me see if I can. Okay, so I grew up on a cotton farm right here in West Texas. There's the farm I grew up on. That's my dad a couple of years ago harvesting some cotton. When I became 18, then I went and joined the U.S. Marine Corps. I was in the reserves. I did 2 tours in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. After that, I came back, started going to school. I went to a local community college, got an associate's in general science. Then I was kind of like, well, what am I really interested in? Is I wanted to transfer to a 4-year university. I'd always been interested in ag, especially when I was, about 10 or so. That's when all the biotechnology crops started coming to the market. And so that was really, really exciting. It was everywhere. It was in the news, it was in magazines, on TV. Everybody was talking about it. And so I actually, when I went to Texas Tech, I did an undergrad in agricultural biotechnology. And then I never imagined that I was going to do a master's and PhD, but one of my undergrad professors, and he said, hey, have you ever thought about grad school? And I said, no, but he said, well, I've got a project if you're interested in it. I started working on castor. It's a plant that you've probably heard about in the news. Every once in a while, some crazy person will send ricin to the president or a senator or something. Well, we were working on reducing the toxin ricin, and we were also trying to improve the oil for use as a biodiesel. So after that, I worked with the USDA. During my PhD, I did some work at the USDA there in Lubbock, Texas, and I did a little bit of postdoc, and then I taught for a little bit at a university in Eastern New Mexico, and then I joined the USDAARS here in Reno in 2019. So this right here is a picture of our main building here. So a little bit about the Grazinglands Research Lab here. It was originally an army fort. It did the resupply for all of the horses and mules for the army up until World War II. I guess they decided that horses and mules weren't important anymore. And so this was actually the old hospital. It's now our main office building. So the USDA was created in 1862 by President Lincoln. He called it the People's Agency. And it's pretty amazing how important that he realized that agriculture was going to be to the future of Americans and the world in general. So the USDA has 8 mission areas related to farm production and conservation, food and nutrition, food safety, marketing and regulations, natural resources, research and education, which I'm part of, rural development and trade, and then specifically the Grazinglands Research Laboratory focuses on forage and livestock and agroclimate and natural resources research. So here's a couple of the USDA ARS innovations. Of course, there's many, many more over hundreds of years that it's been around. Some of them that you've probably had is Roma tomatoes. Super Slurper, it's a corn-based absorbent. Currently, they're using it for books that get wet from, say, at a library, the roof is leaking and you get some books wet. Well, you can put Super Slurper there and it'll take all the moisture out of those books. Another thing is low-fat mozzarella cheese, permanent press close. So the USDA was involved in developing the chemistry that allows permanent press technology to adhere to the cotton. Seedless grates, insect repellent, plant-based. So one of them is based on pine oil, and then it's actually more effective than DEET at keeping mosquitoes off of you. And then another thing is lactose-free milk. So the USDA, we get funding from the US government, from the taxpayers, and then we get that research money, and then we try to solve problems related to agriculture. And then those products are then either available to anyone, and then a company will pick them up and run with them. Like Off has picked up the technology for the insect repellent. Many companies have picked up the permanent press close. So the problem in agriculture. So over here on the left is this is a FAO. It's a branch of the United Nations, and this is the projected world population. So you'll hear a lot. You've probably heard your mentors talk about in 2050 that we're projected to have about 10 billion people. So not just climate change and climate variability, but just in general, the world is having a bigger population, and so we have to think about how we're going to feed and clothe them. So it's a really important task. And then over here on the right, this is the predicted number of people that are hungry around the world. And so this was from 2009. They're projecting about 1 billion people worldwide that don't have enough to eat. So that's not just in the, there's some of those people in the US, but there's also people around the world that don't get enough calories every day. And so we're trying to come up with methods to feed those people. So my research, I'm currently working on 8 different studies. I try to think of my research as a spider web. So I have one idea and reach out to people that can complement that. The days of single person research are over. We've got I can be an expert in agronomy, but I need soil scientists. I need their expertise and the expertise in climate and stuff like that. And then our system-based research, as we call it, makes it stronger and more beneficial to the farmer and the businessman and anybody else that's interested in agriculture. The studies are related to abiotic stress, adaptation of novel crops to the U.S. Great Plains, remote sensing, seed inoculants, and the rhizobiome. So the rhizobiome, for those of you that don't know, rhizo means roots, and then the biome is the microorganisms, the bacteria, fungi, and that type of thing that interact with those roots. So right here, this is the first thing, the RAIN project. So we're evaluating current and novel cropping systems in the Southern Great Plains. We want to know, can we predict the crop a producer should grow to increase profit, increase sustainability, or limit their risk? So there's a lot of trade-offs. So maximizing your profit isn't always the best way. You may be degrading soil and so we want to be able to take these farms and make sure that they're available for future generations. So that might be one way that we're increasing sustainability. So we're doing some common crops. So during the winter, we're planting wheat or triticale. And then during the summer, we're planting sorghum, soybean. Those are some of the common crops. And we're also planting tepary and mothbean, which are some novel crops to Oklahoma and Kansas. So we want to use different crops and management styles. So we're looking at different management styles. We're looking at, so currently in Oklahoma, then we grow winter wheat is the #1 cash crop. And then during the summer, most people leave their fields fallow. So we're looking at, can we increase profitability and sustainability by adding a summer crop? And then we're also looking at hay, if we cut it for hay. So we're looking at the biomass. We're taking the biomass right here. Over here, we're measuring the leaf area. And then eventually we grind these samples up and we look at the forage quality, because that's one of our main purposes is feeding beef cattle here. And so we want to see how this system can work in a beef production system. We're also measuring soil, water, and nitrogen. So here's an example of some of the results. So this is the water use of the rain summer crops. So right here, this blue part is fallow. So right here, you can see one of the fallow plots right here. And so just from the sun beating down on it, there's going to be some level of water that's being taken out of the soil. And then on top of that are the summer crops that these are grown. And as you can see, some of them are using significantly more water over the growing season than the others. And so we're looking at different row spacing. So 15 centimeters or 30 centimeters. 15 centimeters would be for more of a forage or a green manure. So plants like cowpea, mothbean, soybean, they can produce nitrogen. And so that nitrogen is going into the soil and can possibly be used by the following wheat crop. So this right here is a neutron moisture gauge. So it sends out a radioactive isotope, americium and beryllium, and it goes out and it hits, we lower it into this tube right here. It's 1.2 meters into the ground, I think roughly about 4 feet. And so we lower it down. It has little stops on here for every 10 centimeters, and it sends out the neutrons. And when they hit the water, then they bounce back. And the quicker it bounces back, the more water you have in the soil. And the slower it bounces back, the less water you have in the soil. So one of the things we're looking at is flood tolerance of tepary. I don't know if Cindy's mentioned it or not, but it's one of the projects that she's helping me with. She's right here if you haven't seen her. So tepary is a bean that has been grown by people for 5,000 years. They found it in tombs in the Tehuacan Valley of Mexico. Currently, it's indigenous to the Sonoran Desert of the US and Mexico. And then if you remember back to Chuck's presentation the first day when he showed the flooding there in Manhattan. So one thing about climate variability is that we're getting high intense rainfall, which causes short-term flooding of cropland. So that's what we're doing here. We're growing the plants and then we're putting them into water and flooding them for different number of days. And we're trying to see if there's any genetic variability there. So all of these are, the USDA also keeps seed from around the world with different collections. So each of these is up here would be better. Each of these is a different genotype that's been saved by the USDA. And so I'm growing all of them, so they've all got a wide amount of genetic variability, and then we're flooding them to see if there's any genetic differences there. So right here's another project I'm working on. We call it ERICA, which means environment by rotation by rhizobiome interaction cultivars, and I can never remember the A. But we're looking at different cultivars of wheat, and we're also looking at a commercially available product that has different fungi and bacteria, and we're trying to look at how that impacts the growth and then the uptake of nitrogen, phosphorus, and other minerals. So in Oklahoma currently produces about 10% of the U.S. national wheat acres. Wheat has 4 fates, particularly in Oklahoma. It's grazed out, so people are putting cattle onto their wheat and they're grazing it until from October to about June. There's also grazed grain. So as scientists discovered that in about the 1950s, that as long as you remove cattle from wheat at what we call the first hollow stem before that time, then it has no impact on the wheat yield. So a lot of the producers here, cattle come from all across the country, and then they're raised here on winter wheat, and then they go to feedlots after that. Also, there's also grain only, where you do no grazing, you just produce it for grain, and then you can also hay the wheat. So little's known about the interaction between inoculants and the rhizosphere, and then little's known about long-term persistence in the soil. So if we're treating this crop with an inoculant, how does it impact the following crops? So here's 2 technicians. This is my technician Bailey. This is Danielle, the technician of one of the soil scientists here. They're harvesting the above ground biomass and the roots, and then here's the roots after they're cleaned. And we're going to take these roots, grind them up, and then look for DNA signatures of the different bacteria and fungi. So another project I'm working on is rapid in-field peanut to predict biomass production and forage quality. So using UAS, unmanned aerial systems, you'll hear a lot of UAV, but that just talks about the vehicle. The system is all the sensors that we're putting on there. So we're growing peanuts. Here in the US and other countries, peanuts are sometimes used as a hay for cattle, especially if for some reason the main seed crop fails and the farmers aren't able to sell that for a profit. So we're looking at 4 different market classes. So there's Virginia, Valencia, Spanish, Runner. If you've ever gone to Five Guys and you've eaten the peanuts there, then those are the Spanish peanuts. The Virginia peanuts are the larger seed. They a lot of them, and I know in Mexico, then they make a snack. They call them Japanese peanuts. But anyway, where they take the peanuts and they fry them, and then so anyway, based on that, there's different market uses for the different peanuts. So different peanuts are used for peanut butter or just snacking or what have you. And then these peanuts all have a different growth habit. And so we're looking at the biomass that they create, then we're grinding them up and looking at the forage quality. And instead of doing these long-term experiments from May and then sampling all the way through October, we like to be able to take a drone, fly it over, and see if we can tell differences in the quality from the air and also the amount of biomass that they're producing. So this is a little bit related to the rain. So we're looking at the tepary that I've talked about a couple of times. It's a drought-tolerant member of the bean family. They also use it with common bean. They're related close enough to where they can improve common bean with some of the drought characteristics of tepary. But right here, we're looking at different cutting heights. So we cut it at 5 centimeters, 10 centimeters. You can't see over here, but 15 centimeters. And then this is the uncut control. And then we're looking at the impact of cutting on the quality and the amount of biomass. So different plants are able to store food in the roots, and then they're able to regrow. A common one that you'll probably hear about is alfalfa, to where they're able to cut it 3 times during the year, and then they're able to make different hay crops to store it store it for feeding the cattle during the winter. So another thing that I'm looking at is the effect of tepery on the biomass and quality of grain amaranth. So there's about 300,000 known edible plants. However, 60% of our calories come from only 3 crops: rice, maize, and wheat, and this is worldwide. So tepery and grain amaranth were important to the indigenous people of the Americas. Tepery, like I said, is native to North America, and then grain amaranth is native to North and South America. And one thought is that legumes often boost the quality of grain crops when they're grown together. So none of this research can be done by myself. So I'd like to acknowledge the USDA, Oklahoma State, Reno, which is also includes Kansas State. I'm doing a lot of the peanut research with New Mexico State, and there's a tepery breeder at the University of Nebraska that I've been working with. And now I'll take any questions that anybody might have.